Yeah, interesting place to grow up.
So you went in the National Guard?
Yeah.
When? Right after high school?
Yeah, when I was 19.
Yeah.
So I was in there for 9 years.
What was that choice? How did that choice come about?
My buddy convinced me it was a good thing to do.
Really? You don't have any military background in your family or anything?
My grandfather was in World War II.
Yeah. Pretty much everybody's grandfather.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody. So
it's amazing. Like when you think about that, they say that's the most uniformed generation ever.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They
like
didn't.
one out of like 5 or 7 people of that generation was in the military.
Well, they didn't have a choice.
Yeah. No.
It was either that or jail, you know.
I say no.
So I mean, and it was. I think there hasn't really been. I mean, the population that we had plus the war that we were in, they really didn't have a choice because it's like, all right, shit was hitting the fan so bad. So my grandfather hated the military. He despised it.
So he was only in for a little while?
He was in for the whole war, at least. And, I got a couple books, and one is actually about his battalion, and he's got like little notes.
What did he do? Was he in the Army?
Yeah, he was in the Army. And for the life of me, I can't remember what he did because initially he was in an officer program. And so it was like college graduates and they were going through a program and they were going to be, made like a captain or something whenever they finished. Halfway through the program, the Army stopped it. They made him a sergeant, sent him immediately overseas. So he was pissed. Like, he had these very specific expectations about how this was going to go down. Didn't happen at all. Got sent right into the war zone. I can't remember what he did exactly, but yeah, he told me never to join.
And he got out when he could. He got out.
Yeah. As soon as the war was over, he was done. Yeah.
My grandfather was in a submarine.
Really?
It takes a special kind of maniac to do that.
That's wild. Yeah.
He was like he was going to be an accountant. Mm-hmm. He lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is already it makes you a weirdo. Because they're the ones who look down on people who live in the bottom part of Michigan.
Yeah,
they're strange people. They're very keep to themselves and but I don't care who listens to that. I don't care who hears it.
I don't care who.
People from the Yoopers, as they say.
Yoopers,
the Upper Peninsula.
Yeah,
the Yoopers are. They're a weird bunch. But Pearl Harbor happens. He's 17. He lies to get into the military. He says,
no kidding.
He turns 18 really soon.
Really soon.
But like December was 1942, 41, something. So he turned 18 in February. So he's like, yeah, I'm 18. Sure.
Yeah.
And he's like, gets on these submarines. Like within a couple of months he's in Pearl Harbor, and he's like, they're still digging out from being bombed, and he's like gone off to Pearl Harbor for training, and then he's in a submarine and like torpedoing. He worked in the torpedo room, so he was loading torpedoes that were sinking like Japanese cargo ships.
That's wild.
Yeah, he was on the Finback, and he's like 17, 18 years old, getting depth charged by the Japanese. I'm like, what were you doing when you were 18?
Wow. Yeah, right.
Not that.
That's insane. I can't.
And he stayed his whole career. He did like 20 years. He made chief petty officer, I think.
That's wild.
The Finback, there's a couple of interesting stories. The Finback was on patrol in Hawaii area. So they'd be out in the Pacific, and occasionally they would pick up downed airmen, people who like, don't worry about making that the noise or anything. You're fine. So, guys who get shot down, they'd have to go pick them up if they survived. And so they would pick up airmen occasionally. They say, go out there and pick this guy up. He's just floating out in the middle of the ocean. And one of them that picked up was George Bush.
No kidding.
Yeah, the president.
Wow.
So every once in a while, he would get Christmas cards from George Bush, like, thanks for picking me up.
That's pretty awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's just funny that you plucked out the president who would be like the president, like what, 40 or 50 years later?
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
And so he did that, and he was on the USS George Washington, which was a nuclear sub in the 60s, but it was the first submerged launch of a nuclear weapon. Yeah.
Man.
Off of Cape Canaveral here.
Yeah.
He said John F. Kennedy was there watching the launch, and he said the first one, he's like, yeah, we went out there and tested. He just talks so nonchalantly about it. Like, you changed history. Like, the United States having a submarine-based nuclear weapon that could sneak up to your coast and nuke you,
Yeah.
that changes everything.
Yeah. Well, when you're doing it,
It's just a job.
yeah, you're not thinking about you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he tells me, like, yeah, we pressed the button on the first one and it went up and it came back down. It didn't even launch. We flooded the tube. So we had to we figured out you got to put air on it, float it to the top, and then shoot it.
That's wild.
That's a nuclear weapon you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just like, it's like, oh, yeah, we figured it out.
The second one went up.
Whatever. Yeah. It's still there. It's still down there somewhere. It sank.
Yeah.
Good luck.
So yeah, but it's interesting. Like your grandfather had no interest, didn't have an interest.
No. I mean, he was gonna do his duty. That's fine. But he was very, just anti-war. It just didn't, just wasn't about it. But he was gonna, he was gonna do his job. But again, he had a very specific expectation from what the Army told him. And
so you're living on the edge of the hood.
Yeah.
And your homeboy's like, hey, National Guard.
Yeah. Cody. That was his name.
Of course. That sounds like a guy who belongs to the National Guard.
He sold it like it was the greatest damn.
Really?
Yeah. Like, he's like, yeah, man. He's like, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to join, going to over there kill some terrorists. Then I'm going to retire and just.
This is like when?
Well, 9 years
When
ago,
did you graduate?
10 years ago. So this was probably, so I was 19. So this was probably 2008, maybe 2008. Kill some terrorists. I'm going to retire and just live on the beach drinking whiskey sours. He didn't even get through the fucking GED program. No. He didn't get in. He didn't have his degree.
Yeah.
He didn't, and nothing against him. He's not a bad guy, but he oversold this to me. He caused me to join.
Yeah, good salesman.
And at the time it was just like, okay.
What were you doing? What were you thinking about?
School.
Anything.
Yeah, I was going to school at the time, and I think I was probably having like a quarter life crisis or something, or a third life crisis or something. I don't know. And I was like, yeah,
It comes about that time.
yeah, I'll join. I'll give it a shot,
Yeah.
And immediately as I joined, I was like, I'm going to fucking die.
Oh,
like,
really?
it's, and
Where'd you go?
Nowhere.
Where do you? Oh,
nowhere. I was in 9 years. I had 3 deployments.
yeah.
They all got canceled. Iraq, Kuwait, and Afghanistan all got canceled.
Wow.
So I'm not complaining because who knows what could have happened. But at the same time, it's like, I never had the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in for 9 years. I made it to sergeant. The first half of that, I was communications. The second half, I was a chaplain's assistant, and that was the greatest job.
Really?
That's the coolest job. And
Why is that?
well, one, you don't have to deal with all the bullshit that most other soldiers have to, because it's just you and the chaplain. So you guys, your primary responsibility is to just
Be available.
be available and help your soldiers. That's it.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to go and talk and socialize and so we were for the battalion. So we were, responsible for 800 to 1,000 people.
Is this in Kentucky still?
No, Kentucky, I was communications. Then I moved to PA. I was communications for about a year. Then I reclassed, a year, maybe 2. Then I reclassed to become a chaplain's assistant so I could become a sergeant. And it was awesome. The chaplain and I were such a great team, and we have different religious backgrounds, which I think made us a better team, because a lot of people were kind of intimidated to approach him because, 1, he's an officer, and 2, he's a priest.
Yeah.
And some people who are
members of the authority.
yeah. So it's like people who weren't very religious, even though he's the greatest guy, he's one of the best people I know. Some people still were kind of like weirded out by visiting chaplain, and me, I'm a little bit more salty, so to speak.
Which I think we'll find out more and more the more we talk about.
The more bourbon we drink. So that's what we're drinking now. So they would approach me, and being enlisted, it's a little bit more of a different dynamic, So, and
Would qualify yourself as not a religious person, even at the time.
It's difficult to really classify. Not to sound like a stereotypical.
Did you grow up in the church?
No, my parents, even though they believe in God, they're very open-minded. So they didn't push anything on me. They didn't, it's like, this is what we believe. We prayed every night. We did that thing, but it was never like, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to be. This is, it was just like, there's other options out there. Feel free to look at them.
But they did instill like a Judeo-Christian ethic in you?
Okay. Yeah. And around the time when I first joined is when I started having anxiety issues, because I was having like existential crisis, you know, like panic attacks and stuff like that. And basically, so I wasn't religious, but I believed in God and I prayed on a regular basis, prayed every day, multiple times a day. And then I remember very specifically one time I was in a PE class at the college I was going to. It was a martial arts class. And I was injured, so I had to sit out. And I just remembered, what if everything I think is completely wrong? And I've thought about that before, but for some reason, it just hit me in a different way and had my very first panic attack.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And it freaked you out.
It did. Because like, I think when you have certain beliefs, even if those beliefs aren't very detailed, you know, because again, I didn't go to church, but I prayed, you know, I still believed. It was a very strong belief. When you have certain beliefs that are like the core of your existence, and when you really inspect them and really think about them and realize that it could be bullshit, you know, for lack of better phrasing, it shakes you. You know, it shakes you. So I remember.
It's your identity.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember I had my first panic attack.
I mean, you say panic attack, do you mean like in a traditional way of like a panic?
Hyperventilating, my heart rate went up, I started sweating.
Fear.
Yeah, fear. Yeah. And so I went out and it almost felt like a heart attack. I'm like, Jesus, you know, what's going on? So I was able to calm myself down. I come back in and I remember this dude in the class, I can't remember his name right now. I'm terrible with names. I remember faces forever. Like if I met you 10 years ago and I talked to you for 10 minutes,
hey,
I'll remember your face forever, but never with names. But he noticed I looked a little off and he's like, so what's going on, man? And I didn't know what to do. So I just told him everything that I just went through.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I didn't know he was a philosophy major at the time. And he's like, man, yeah. He's like
right on the couch here.
yeah. He's like, you know, no matter what is, whether you die, and we're going to talk about this a lot, I think. Yeah. If for future reference, we're going to be talking philosophy a lot in this podcast. So if you like philosophy, stay tuned. But he's
bourbon too.
Yeah. What?
A bourbon too.
Yeah, and bourbon. Yeah. We can have a drink of the week and just have a different one. Oh yeah, today we're drinking Heaven Hill, Kentucky Straight, white label, 6 years old.
But it's bottled in bond.
Bottled in bond. Yes.
Don't just say it's the swill in the plastic jug.
It's not. It's actually.
It's
It's smooth.
Higher.
It's 100 proof. And it's smooth, and you can't get it in Florida apparently.
You can't. So. Heaven Hill doesn't even bother shipping it out. They're like, no one's going to buy this.
I like it.
But it's a secret. Kentucky secret.
Kentucky secret.
Yeah. You have to go there to get it.
Kind of like me.
Yo, Kentucky secret.
But yeah, so he basically said, you know, no matter if you die and there's something else, or you die and that's it, you're just a body in the dirt. Why be unhappy now? And at the time.
Like that's an absolute. Who knows what happens?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
you're gonna be dead.
Yeah. So it's like that's a good answer. Yeah. Maybe the perfect answer. I don't know.
Down anyway.
Yeah. Well, at the time I was just like, yeah, whatever, because you know, I'm a teenager and I'm going through this again, this existential dread, and I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm not really thinking about it, but thinking back, that was a great answer. Yeah. And 10 years of panic attacks and anxiety problems since then. After that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and they manifested in different ways, which we can go into more detail.
What about now?
At some point. Still there, but not nearly as bad. So
and manageable.
Yeah, manageable for sure. Because I think what happens is it manifested for a particular reason, and then it would change. So it would still be for that reason, but it would manifest in different ways. So instead of just the immediate fear of like, oh my, what if everything I believe is wrong? That ultimately entails a fear of death and dying. So then that transfers to other like phobias, like I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to go out because I'm worried something might happen, or I wouldn't want to eat at a restaurant.
What if something does happen?
Yeah, something does happen. Or I wouldn't want to eat at a restaurant because what if I get poisoned? You know, maybe not literal poison, but something was wrong with the food, so I'd only eat food that was made at my house. All kinds of shit like that. Yeah. And then a few years ago, I saw a therapist because we noticed certain pattern. My wife and I, she's been with me since high school. I was 16, she was 18. So we've been together 14 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we noticed particular patterns in my behavior. So I saw a psychiatrist and did some stuff, and it turns out I had a few different things like OCD, ADHD, something called borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, stuff like that. And all those things kind of mold together. But it made perfect sense because like every so many months, I would have like really, really high points, like manic stages. And then a few months later, I'd have really, really low depression stages. And I'd have difficulty keeping a job and this, that, and the other. And she's like, yeah, that's totally because of these issues. You know, it's something called mood cycling. It just certain points of the years you have high highs and low lows, and then really high highs and really low lows, and it's just like it's difficult to do anything. So that all jived really, you know, like perfectly with what I was experiencing. So during that time up until today, you know, I realized that, I don't know how much in detail I want to get here because I know we're going to keep talking, but I realized that, you know, your personal beliefs are pretty much impossible to prove. You know, like your religious beliefs. You know, if you believe in God, there's no way to really prove it.
That's the definition of faith.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
faith, sorry.
Yeah, faith. And so the worst case scenario for us, for most of us, is that there is nothing, which is kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But we've been conditioned to think that that is a worst case scenario, mm-hmm. you know, because of our religious upbringing. Our entire American society is based off, you know, our laws are based off, you know, Christian beliefs and certain things like that, you know, the dynamics of power or whatever.
Do good now and make out later, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Or go without now and get later.
Yeah, and our entire existence, our entire, you know, lives are spent expecting something better later on. Yep. You know?
The reward comes, it isn't here.
Yeah.
Even though Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is inside you, it's here.
Yeah. So basically, I had to get comfortable with the idea of the worst case scenario, mm-hmm. which I'm not completely yet, and I don't think it's very possible. Excuse me. I don't think it's easy to really fully accept that because there's so many different levels that hit you on. You know, there's a survival instinct, you know, just on the basic thing like, oh, I'm going to die. You don't want to think about that because you want to keep going.
That's trigger something biologically.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going. Yeah. And then the other part, and I think one of the bigger issues for people thinking about this kind of stuff is that it's the unknown, mm-hmm. you know, and that is the biggest unknown to human existence because nobody's ever come back, you know, so there's no way to know how that process is going to be, mm-hmm. you know, I mean, so I think that bugs us on a deeper level than we realize because part of the reason why we have, you know, evolutionary advantage compared to other animals is that there's something in us that makes us want to know things. You know, we explore our environment. We manipulate our environment to our needs. We can understand that there's something bigger out there than just the things that we see, like the rest of the universe and stuff like that. So there's something in us that makes us want to explore and learn and understand.
A giant brain.
Yeah. And this is one thing that we just can't understand. Mm-hmm. Because once it happens, that's it. Mm-hmm. So I think that
there's no empirical evidence. There's nothing to find.
Yeah. So it's
because when you find out, you can't come back.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that bugs us on just a lot. You just, even if it doesn't send you into panic attacks, if you really think about it, it's going to irritate you in some way because you're going to try to think about, okay, what is it like? What could it be like? You know, like one of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Love the dude. You know, he said, you know, try to imagine going to sleep and never waking up. You can't because you always wake up. So that's the only experience you've had. So it just bugs you. So, you know, I started practicing Zen, and I think that's probably the closest thing that I consider that I would, you know, classify myself as. And more recently, I got into Stoicism, like the Stoic philosophy, which is probably the closest Western equivalent to Buddhism or Zen that I think there is. It's phenomenal. Like, just the writings are amazing. I've read like 3 or 4 books now, and basically it still kind of goes back to what that dude told me in the gym class. It's just, why be unhappy now? You know, ultimately things are the way they are. You'll find out when it happens, and let's go from there.